Hello, and welcome to Meta and the Blackhouse Foundation presents the Black Filmmakers Journey here at the Filmmaker Lodge at the Sundance Film Festival 2022. Welcome, all of you. I am Jenean Glover, the Executive Director of the Blackhouse, and excited to share this amazing panel with you today. But before we do that, we have a little bit of housekeeping to do. Because we are here broadcasting from Los Angeles, I need to make sure I recognize the tribal land upon which we sit. So Los Angeles, California is part of the indigenous land that would be known primarily as Chumash, also Kitten, Namak, Gabrielino, Fernandinho, Tata Divan. The tribal territory, the traditional tribal territory upon which we sit. So I wanted to make sure you recognize that because that's what Sundance has led with throughout this entire festival. So let's get started. Let's take a look at who we're bringing to the panel today. You'll learn a lot about the Blackhouse and Meta and our partnership, but let's talk about the filmmakers that we're bringing to the stage. We'll start with JaSaun Buckner. She is a Chicago native, a Howard alum, and also an alum from USC graduate school. We share that. She is a producer, but not only is she part of our Meta Scene program, she also participated in a producer's fellowship that we have been putting on for the last 3 years at the Blackhouse. So she's a seasoned fellow, I would say. And we're so happy that you're here. So thank you so much, JaSaun, for coming today and welcome.
Thank you.
Wonderful. So I'm going to bring everybody on and then we will begin. Let's see. There is Kaelo. Are you here? Kaelo is joining us from Columbia University. He is a graduate student currently, Nigerian American, and he is part of our our grantee program for the Meta Scene fellows. And so we'll talk a lot about what that means, but we're happy to have you here with us today and welcome.
Thank you, Jenean.
Wonderful. Now, we want to talk about why we're here. Meta is the next evolution of social connection. You might have known it as Facebook back in the day, but if you've kept up, things are evolving here. So I would like to introduce our partner, Jen Lewis Barrett. She is joining us from Atlanta, and she is the head of entertainment and the founder of the Scene program. I can't even begin to tell you how amazing her background is, but we'll talk more about it once we get started. Welcome, Jen. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenean.
And last but not least, someone who needs, no introduction to the Sundance audience. He is our board chair and founder of the Blackhouse Foundation. Now, mind you, it's been 15 years, guys, so been around for a minute. But along with that, Brickson is a trustee at Brown University and also an alum from Harvard Business School. So he's joining us today from Los Angeles as well. Thank you and welcome, Brickson.
Good to be with everybody.
Excellent. So before we get into the questions, I want everybody to keep in mind that part of what we're discussing is the buzz around some of the hottest films here at Sundance. And so we know that nearly half of them have at least one or two people of color in a major role as an executive producer, actor, someone above the line, key roles involved in writing and pulling the projects together. So we want to make sure that we're taking a look at that, the slate that has been proposed today from Sundance, and we talk about what might be our favorite one. So we'll wrap up with that at the end, but I want to make sure we're thinking about that because there are a lot of things that are buzzing. So we'll get to those as well. But let's start with Brickson. So Brickson, tell me about the evolution of the partnership with Meta. It's been about 5 years. It's already become Meta in 5 years, so there's already been change. So tell me a little bit more about how it started and how you got here today.
So thank you, Jenean, and good to be with everybody. And sad not to be in Park City, but glad to be back virtually. I would say it is probably a metaverse story, if I can be so coy, Jen, because Jen really spectacularly reached out to us in a blind email, which I then summarily ignored. So read your emails; they're still relevant. And a good friend, Kay Madadi, a good friend to Blackhouse and to me and to Jen and to Facebook and Meta, reached out and said, "Hey, get with it." And so we connected with Jen, and she just came with incredible energy around this scene program. And in 2018, we were able to build out an opportunity for folks to think about a film in the festival and to really see what the scene's magic was in terms of promoting and engaging audiences, but also propelling forward quite frankly, the case that filmmakers can make in selling their films. We always talk at Blackhouse about have an audience and put that audience forward. So this film, A Boy, a Girl, a Dream, Election Night, by Qasim Basir, was one that we really partnered with and did incredible impact, moving exercises and content and engagement around. And quite frankly, Meta and Facebook have been back for the subsequent years, each year bigger than the last. And so that has culminated or peaked with what we're doing today and talking about another presenting sponsor, presence from Meta, but also our Future Filmmakers program, which has been a fellowship program that has been with Blackhouse from the start, but has been sort of waxed and waned, got to a place where it's 10 filmmakers. And now with Facebook, it's more than just the days on the festival grounds in Park City and more than just 10 folks. It's just been expanded beyond measure. So we're incredibly grateful to Meta for that program, which is Future Filmmakers, which is 100 instead of 10, 15 emerging filmmakers, and then some engagement with established filmmakers. So just a really great moment for me to steal Jen's thunder, but talk a bit about what they've meant to us and to our constituents.
Excellent. I just wanted to mention, and I didn't say this earlier, I have a background in being a talent agent. So I've come to the festival in different capacities over the years before being the executive director at the Blackhouse. So to watch where the Blackhouse has emerged and to see all the programming is exciting. I was here in 2007 at that time as a talent manager, and we were like, where's our network of friends? We didn't see it. So the fact that the Blackhouse is here and educating and uplifting and continuing to propel Black creative voices is amazing. So I thank you again for all of that you started and founded, and looking forward to the transformation to take it to the next level. But while we have you, why was this year's expansion important right now? Because you could have done this at any time, but to move from 10 fellows to 100 fellows, that takes a heavy load. So tell me, why did you think it was time now?
Yeah, I mean, I think, success is when preparation meets luck, right? And so, I gotta be just candid. Jen Barrett has been our luck. And she's come to us and said, 10's not enough. She said more than 100. Let's do more than 100. And I was like, well, let's calm down. And so we landed on 100. But I do have to back up a moment and say Blackhouse is, I'm a co-founder, and it hasn't just been me. And so that collaborative effort and collaborative energy that Jen brought started with us in 2006 with board members who raised their hand and said, when let's put on a show, you be the 10 man. They said, yes, let's do it. And so that spirit has repeated. And so when great partners within sponsor organizations like Jen and Meta come along and say, be more, do more, strive for even more, given what could be seen as a tragedy, and it is a tragedy, but a constraining tragedy with coronavirus and COVID, they had the foresight to see that virtual connectivity as a moment of opportunity. We certainly could never bring 100 future filmmakers to Park City, but we can bring them to a Facebook group twice or three times a month with relative ease. So I at the risk of pandering, Jen and her team at Facebook came and said, let's go well beyond 10, let's go well beyond 100, and we're like, all right, calm down, back up, and so we landed on 100.
Thank you. And it's the ultimate privilege to be at Sundance without a film. So for all of the fellows that have had the opportunity to be there, just creating that at all is something to be commended, and they should be very grateful to see that. I think a lot of folks that are my peers would have loved to have that opportunity to show up at Sundance and not have to be responsible for anything in particular. But it's an amazing learning ground. So Jen, I want to ask you, what does this expansion look like to you? Can you tell us a little bit about it? But I also want to give heed to the fact that you are in Atlanta, which is the Cherokee and Muskegee, and there's one more, I think it's Lenape, tribal land. So I just had to make sure we represent that because we're coming from different places, even though we're really at the Filmmaker Lodge at Sundance.
Yes.
Okay,
Oh.
so yes, Jen.
Amazing. Well, I think, thinking about what the expansion looked like this year really goes back to some of the things that Brickson was talking about. When I first met Brickson, when I first discovered the Blackhouse and the work that they were doing, was just really inspired by that work, looking at the industry at large and what are the challenges, what are the gaps that we have. There continues to be this big gap between the stories that we're seeing on screen and the audiences that we're looking to connect with those stories, and then seeing the work that Blackhouse was doing. Wanted to learn more, and also to see what are ways that we could at Facebook, then Facebook, now Meta, do to support that. Like, what was looking at the superpowers of Blackhouse, what were the superpowers of our company that could help support that? So we really saw that as exposure and amplification and connection through community. Those are the things that we do really well. So how can we come together to do that towards the work that Blackhouse was driving? So that was when we started in 2017, and then debuted at Sundance 2018 with the Scene program to support filmmakers from underrepresented communities, to help them take advantage of the audiences and opportunities across our platform to get themselves and their work seen. And then over the last 4 years, been trying to continue that, trying to grow it. But we really took a look, in the midst of the pandemic, took a look at what were the things that were still driving value when things had changed so dramatically, and what were the areas where we still needed to do more or could do more. And I think it's that consistency, it was that continuity that was really missing from what we had been doing together the last 4 years. And so we came together with a new organization inside Meta that had launched in 2021 called We the Culture, supporting Black creators across our platform, to expand the Scene program to the Scene Black Filmmakers program. And as Brickson had described, our goal with this expansion was really to support Black filmmakers at every stage in their career with consistency and continuity, to help them take that next step and then connect people back with the group of filmmakers who are where they had just been. And that was our goal. So we looked at that from 3 different groups, 3 different standpoints: student, independent, and established, and looked to provide education, networking, exposure, and financing support for them at every level to be able to do that. So we had our grant program for the students. So of the 100 students, we had 5 grants of $20,000 each for the students to be able to make their short film. And then we worked together with the independent filmmakers, getting them connected in through our supplier network, and connecting them to the biggest brands across the entertainment industry for storytelling opportunities across their business and their releases. And then working with our studio partners, networking and streaming partners. When they had a film with a Black filmmaker behind it, we would provide incremental support to build out a campaign that we would fund the production for and fund the ad credits for, to be able to showcase more audiences why they wanted to see this film, focusing on the person behind the story. So that was how we looked at it across the board, and just we're so excited to be able to partner together with the Blackhouse and bring in so many filmmakers across North America to be able to do this together and see how we could drive more value, create more opportunities, and push forward this shift that we want to see in our industry at this critical time.
Amazing. The collaboration is key, not just with us, with this partnership, but it sounds like internally you guys got yourselves in a place where you could combine forces and really make this big and powerful. And it was, again, lofty undertaking, but I think we all learned a lot from it. And let's now talk to some of the filmmakers involved to find out how their experience, what the experience was. So Kaelo, I am going to move on to you now and ask you, how did you get involved in the Scene Filmmaker program? Tell us about that journey and what came as a result of it.
Jenean, I first heard about the Scene Filmmaker program from Ali Succeedeen. She's the industry outreach person at Columbia. She only had great things to say about the Blackhouse Foundation. So I applied. To be honest, I wasn't expecting much. I mean, I had just started getting used to those emails. You know, the emails of the rejection emails with we got an overwhelming, yeah. But to my great surprise, I got a congratulations email. And this it was very timely because this was just after a very difficult COVID semester, and I needed this win, and Blackhouse provided that.
Excellent. And I did not mention New York City, because we did say you're there at Columbia. It is the Manhattan, you would be surprised, Manhattan, Manhattan and Lenape territory, tribal territory. So just so that everyone is aware. So tell us this, the grant process sounds fantastic. I cannot imagine being a grad student and getting $20,000 to make a TikTok, no, a short film. And let's talk about this because short films are, for this year's Sundance, that was the most that were submitted this year, I think, in a record number of submissions, because it was the easiest for people to make. In this pandemic, people didn't have all the resources around. So you got $20,000 to make a film. Tell us about that process, and maybe we can see it if you would share it with us, but tell us more about it first.
So the grant process was quite straightforward. We had to submit a treatment of the story we wanted to tell and a feasible production plan. And once the selections were made and the production was greenlit, the story I decided to tell was Nkeme Funa, which means what is mine cannot be lost. I had been in America for about a year, and when I started thinking about the story, and I knew I wanted to tell something that spoke about like belonging and identity, because I was still learning to adjust to the shift from moving from Nigeria. And around that, it was also around 9/11, the anniversary, and the whole energy of that period. And I remember seeing this article about Black firefighters who are never truly like recognized for their sacrifice. And I knew that I wanted to tell something that represented them. So that's where the story was born from. And it explores these siblings who had lost their dad at 9/11 and who are still like suffering from the repercussions, and their pain is not being recognized as it should be.
Wonderful.
And yeah, so the process has been amazing so far. It has been amazing so far. I have gotten to collaborate with filmmakers. Luckily, there was another scene fellow in my cohort who was also at Columbia, Ivan Rome, and that's who I collaborated with on this project, and we shared the same vision. So we created it together.
Excellent. So now let's take a look at the trailer for Nkeme Funa.
It was just another autumn day, no different than the one before. But in one moment, everything changed. The sky was on fire. Suddenly, this day had a name, 9/11. As I watched the fires, I did not know it burned much closer to home.
So much has changed.
After all this time, you're still sticking with that?
With what?
That lie. Our family was broken and you shattered to pieces.
That is not fair.
You abandoned your responsibilities.
My responsibilities? You wouldn't know responsibility if it hit you in the head.
Hi, I'm not sure if we're muted or not, but that was fantastic, Kaelo.
Really good.
I can only imagine what that must have felt like to make, and it looks fantastic. So congrats to you. Thank you for sharing with us. Wonderful. So now we're going to move on to my fellow Chicago native, JaSaun Buckner. And before we talk about it, we need to talk about where we're from. Did you know that Chicago is the let me get this right, Potawatomi tribal territory? And it's just, all of this is really interesting research, but when you look at the map, it's just fascinating to know the, indigenous land upon which we all sit. So those of you at home, wherever you are, and we have a global audience, make sure you look it up for yourselves as well. Okay, so JaSaun, we mentioned before that you've been in 2 programs here at the Blackhouse, which is fantastic for us. But because that was something that you've done, you're a producer and you kind of had something in the can already before you became an emerging filmmaker with the SCENE program. Tell us why that was important for you to do now. Where was the value for you at this point in your career to get into this program? So tell us more about that process, please.
Sure. I'm going to take a couple steps back and also acknowledge that I was at Sundance in 2007. I was working at Nickelodeon at the time as a creative executive, junior creative executive, working on TV series for young girls, teenage girls. But in the spirit of Sundance and came to that first Blackhouse experience. It wasn't my first time at Sundance, but went to that first Sundance experience. So I've always felt like I've been a part of the Blackhouse family and community, encouraging and supporting filmmakers and really seeing how you can bring together resources to not just create a community, but also impact. And my career has really centered around content and working with artists and working with creatives to make an impact, whether it be through education, programming, teen programming, pro-social, documentary. And, it takes a lot of resources to do that, not just money, but people and stamina. So I was a 2019 producing fellow with the Blackhouse, and I loved being a part of that program. I was part of the first cohort, and not only did I develop a new network of peers, my fellow producers, but through the program, we were exposed and introduced to just so many great people. And I think for programs, right, in this space, in this industry, a lot of it is, okay, we're going to connect you, we're going to connect you, we're going to connect you. But the Blackhouse was very intentional in making connections that would lead to progress in our careers by saying, here's JaSaun, here's her body of work, here's this cohort of 7 women producers, and here's what they bring to the table. So at the studios and at the networks and at the production companies and at the streamers, you can't say we didn't give you the exposure to these women and to these producers. And that program, again, was great. It helped to really, I think, develop myself just as a person. And we don't always talk about how important it is to be mindful of who you are, where you are in your well-being, where you are in your mind to continue. Like all careers, but especially in entertainment, you're faced with a lot of rejection, a lot of competition. You're sensitive because you're putting ideas into the world. You're also very strategic. And, there's like all of these roles that you play, and you really have to take care of yourself. And in our fellowship program, again, we were given exposure and made great connections, but we were also working with a career coach, life coach, and then just the support of the Blackhouse. And that didn't stop when my year ended. So last year in 2021, Dolly Turner reached out, as she often does, with an opportunity and she talked about the SCENE program. And to be honest, it was at a time where I was really just finishing my producing role on In Our Mother's Gardens. And we were exhausted from refinishing a film, delivering it for Netflix, and everything that comes with finishing a feature length film a documentary that is about real people's lives. And with that documentary, and I'm making a point. With that documentary, we were telling personal stories. I'm not featured in the documentary, but we created like an ecosystem where women were talking about the mothers and mother figures in their lives, and that extends to me. And again, speaking to women, speaking to girls, wanting to tell stories and expose the stories from the documentary to as many people as possible. Well, we've got Netflix, and then I'm presented with an opportunity to work in a filmmaker community with Facebook. Facebook at the time, it's like, that's huge to be able to lean into that platform, to be able to learn more about how to use the tools of the platform. And, I was a bit trepidatious about that universe and all that comes with it. But I really believe you need to know something to have an opinion, to work within it or work against it. So I said, let me lean into this. Let me lean into this experience and really learn how to use this platform. And so the timing of it, and I think the momentum of my career, what I'm passionate about, who I want to speak to, those people are on Facebook. We're on Instagram. So let me learn as much as I can. And the program is set up to do that. So that's how that came about.
It's fantastic. And we will talk a little bit more about innovation because we are on the cusp of this. This isn't a traditional program that Meta and the Blackhouse has put together. But let's let the audience take a look at your movie, In Our Mother's Garden, which was on Netflix this past spring.
Say one more.
And take one deep breath in. Exhale. You good?
Yeah.
Okay. My mama is a firecracker.
My mother is amazing. My mom can sing like nobody's business. She is who she is, and because of who she is, I am who I am, the good and the bad.
Like most Black women, I would say that the women in my family are complicated.
All our mamas, all our grandmothers, our aunts, all they were trying to do was survive.
Take no stuff kind of women, but they also knew how to hold a family together.
You don't know from hard. She knows all the hard.
The joke amongst the grandchildren is to try to get grandma to say, I love you.
So you know how most Black people who ain't from New Orleans, they got that praying grandmother, and they got that cookie baking grandmama? Not me. One bet horses and one had 11 husbands.
Anything that I want to be in the world, I can't be that if I'm not willing to wrestle with my own demons and overcome them.
I think that Black women often aren't exposed to the idea that healing is possible.
We have to call the names of the people that have brought us to this point. And it's our responsibility to make sure that our people are not invisible.
There are women like that in the world, the rememberers. And as long as you remember one thing, everything can continue.
So impressive. Congratulations. You know, we think of emerging filmmakers and I'm like, that looks really good. That's emerging. Maybe I don't know the level that I should be on one day, but it looks fantastic. And, JaSaun, you were just starting to talk about innovation, and Meta is an innovative platform in and of itself. It did not exist prior to, when you attended Sundance in 2007, you had the opportunity to possibly do a program at a studio, but there are new opportunities now with this. What do you think about this important change at this point in time in the industry? You were leading to it because you were telling your story. So just talk about why programs like this existing now are important, and what have you learned by being a part of the cohort of emerging filmmakers?
That's a really good question. And honestly, the innovation and technology are It's around us, and it's been around us. I think in 2002, when I first started working at Nickelodeon, in my job interview, I said, I want to have my own network one day. I think it's going to be on the computer. I don't know how it's going to work, but I'm going to bring together all these programs based on things that I like and people that I want to work with. And looking back, I was talking about something like a YouTube or a Facebook or a metaverse, but I didn't have the language or the example for it. So I think as creators and creatives and producers, we have these visions. And then when the technology is there to meet it, it's amazing. And maybe 15 years ago, Sundance were thinking short films, experimental films, feature-length films, documentaries, etc. But maybe you have like that short form idea, but there was no outlet for it. So in this innovation of technology can also come innovation within creativity and also how we're working together, so that the stories that I want to tell that might not add up to a short film, or it might not add up to a feature, but given the technology and the platform, I have a place for it. And I think that that's amazing, and it's coming right when it's supposed to. Maybe a little late, but also right on time and ahead of time, because as more filmmakers and as more content creators and producers of color and women are able to get their stories out, there are more places for them. So I look at it that way, and I'm hoping that the creativity and the community of people and how we're figuring out new ways to work together, that's also inspiring people who are at the helm of innovating technology, so that we're working together towards more access, exposure, and places to give.
Wonderful. I would say that not only is that encouraging for those who are coming along, it's also giving those that can provide the opportunity, taking notes on what needs to be available. So with that, I want to turn to Brickson and say, tell me what's different about this program, what it set out to do, and what it's actually doing now. Because I think, with all of this evolution that's taken place, it's important to do it. It was important to do it again this year, or it was important to do it this year, but why? Tell us a little bit more about what it means for Blackhouse Foundation, but also the students and the level of students that have been involved. Tell me more about that.
So as I said a little bit earlier, I think the COVID of it all is so important. And I have to take my hat off to Sundance as well, because it has been a real platform for innovation and movement. So when we started in 2007, it was a film festival, and you had a film, and no one thought about television. Television was a bit of a place where you would never be caught, hawking your wares as a serious creator. And that certainly has shifted significantly in the time. And so Sundance has adjusted for the episodic work as well. And so I think that we've been very lucky to partner with Sundance first and foremost, because they've been innovating and accepting new platforms and moving even faster than we have. So VR, right? So thinking about the day when that was more than it is today, because as we move to the metaverse, it's much more integrated, right? It's not even this sort of cabin you go to somewhere and just put on the headset and hope it works out, right? It's in so many people's homes. And so I think in that environment, in that context, it really felt important to as Kaelo talked about it, I don't know that we knew it, but we suspected there were folks who were struggling, right? Mm-hmm. It's the opportunity to say, here is a whole platform that's dedicated to the notion of getting content out to folks either on the native platform or promoting other places. The siren's in a hurry. Thinking about how do you marry that to somebody who is in school right now, right? So you are tied to your screen if you're not able to be on campus, but I don't know that there is the physical connection between I'm tied to my screen and there's a universe of creative outlet that I can be connected to. And so seeing, is proven to be able to propel things that were on the screen outside of our four little walls. So how do we then help creators understand how to be engaged inside those walls, still creating, still collaborating, still finding audience in meaningful ways right here? And so I think that the program in that regard for the future filmmakers, 100 students from a variety of schools. So it started at Howard. In subsequent years, we spread to additional schools, but even more schools. So we got more students, more schools, more access, more programming. Can I go on with the mores? And then you add in that as well, the universe of emerging filmmakers that we know and love. And emerging is much more about stage and career, and or even more than that, it's much more about y'all out there than it is about them, right?
Yeah.
They've got the goods, right?
Right.
Now they just have to be connected to all the audiences that need to know them, all the executives that need to know them. And so as we look back on our 15 years of work, this is a perfect optimization of a really unfortunate moment where we're all locked inside and sort of bound by this tragedy and this really cascade of tragedies to make something good and useful and expansive out of it in an innovative way. And that is hot for lack of any other, we just needed to get the hotness. And I think we captured it.
Amazing. And, just hearing more, just to be ready for that, it takes a lot, especially when, people need to heal, because we're in a really interesting time with the pandemic. But I'm going to ask you guys something along the lines of the pandemic in a moment. I want to hear from Jen. Just what are your thoughts around how things have changed? Now that Meta is driving change for the way we communicate, tell us more about how that will impact this program and just what's on the horizon.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the biggest change really is connected to what Brickson was talking about, that physically we are disconnected from each other in ways that we haven't been before. And how can we bring people back together? How can we create not just a sense of community, but an actual functioning community to connect people? And when I think about it from an industry perspective, the industry focus is the same, of connecting people around the greatest stories. But people's behaviors for doing that have completely changed. And when something changes so dramatically from an audience perspective, then the industry has to change as well. And I think what that's done is really opened up people's minds around, okay, if the way that the audience is behaving or connecting is completely different, then we're going to have to do something completely different as well. And that gives the space for reconsidering everything, I think, and looking at who are the voices and who have the stories that are going to bring people back together. And, I think as we continue to be physically disconnected from each other, the stories that we see on our screens become even more important, because for a lot of people, it could be the first time, or for some, it could be the only time where they have the opportunity to see the world from a perspective that's different from their own. And I think for that reason, those stories need to be authentic. They need to be told by somebody who is going to give a real perspective, that people are coming there so that understanding grows. And that's what we've seen with the industry. That's what we've seen with our partners across studios, networks, and streaming services, is really this openness and desire to find those new voices who are going to do what we need as an industry and tell these important stories from a real perspective. And that, I think, is where this expansion, we were able to help with that. It was meeting a need that both the industry and the filmmaking community had, and just kind of opening those doors to each other, which I think is what we really tried to focus on this year, is how do we open those doors and how do we connect people to be able to tell those important stories that everybody needs to see.
Amazing. Do we have a clip that we can show that shows a little bit of this?
I'll give a little context for this. So one of the studio partners that we worked with was Universal Pictures around their film Candyman that came out this year, with director Nia DaCosta behind it. And so as I had shared earlier, one of the ways that we've been working with studios is connecting around a title that has a Black filmmaker behind it. And our goal was to create an incremental part of their marketing campaign that told the story of Nia DaCosta and why she wanted to tell the story. Why did she want to tell it right now? And why did she feel like it was important that she was the one to tell it? And so this piece that you're about to see tells that story for audiences, and it ran as part of their marketing campaign for the film.
What's Candyman?
Candyman was a real sort of urban legend when I was growing up. It wasn't just attached to the movie. For us, Candyman was some demon ghost man killing people in the projects.
We didn't have a black Freddy. We didn't have a black Jason. It felt important that this Candyman be told from a black perspective.
Candyman is so perennial. We're talking about the cycles of violence and how history repeats itself and how we collectively process trauma through stories.
Candyman. 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 Candyman.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Jen. And you know, in your introduction, I neglected to say that you studied graphic design in Florida. So I can still see it in every other aspect of your career. You designed the scene program, and you know, you didn't know what you were putting together, but it was innovative, and you are continuing to push the boundaries, and we appreciate it because it provides opportunities that help us stay on the cusp and, you know, provide the more that Brickson mentioned to our constituents and all of the ones coming up, because we always like to advocate for creators of content that are, you know, on they're multi-platform creators now. So we want to be able to give them solutions and opportunities. So thank you for what you do. So these next two questions.
I just wanted to add on the more front there.
Yes.
One of the things that's been really helpful for us in driving forward this program and these different opportunities is with a campaign like that, what we're able to measure on our platform is what was the impact of people seeing that part of the story in regard to, are they more likely to want to see the film? Are they more likely to remember the film? And that's what has allowed us to be able to grow this program as well, because what we see is people see the trailer, they see the typical parts of the campaign, and then they also see this. And we can measure the difference between people's perspectives when they've seen the entire campaign plus this piece with Nia DaCosta, or the entire campaign and didn't get to see this piece of it. And we're seeing a real difference that it could be the final component that has somebody remember the film, that has them decide to want to go see it. You know, we run thousands of marketing campaigns for entertainment content on our platform every year. And we see what drives people to want to watch something, right? We know genre is important. We know cast is important. And more we're seeing that people want to put their money and time behind stories and storytellers who they believe in. So showing the aspect of the campaign of who's behind it and why they wanted to tell that story is a meaningful way to shift audience perception to go see a film or turn on their device to see a film. And that's really important, because that's what studios are looking at. That's what they're looking for, is who are the people that are going to connect with audiences to get them to want to see it. And so I think it makes it even more important for us to invest here and grow this program so that we're able to show that side and have the data to back it up to the industry to show them why these storytellers and their stories are important.
I think it's phenomenal. A creator that also understands the business aspects, and we're talking about being seen. So if you know who is seeing your product at the end of the day, and you can communicate why and have metrics, etc., analytics to understand and share, I think that makes all the sense in the world. So thank you for that. Innovation, you're on the cusp of it. I love it. So let's talk about this pandemic that we've been in for the last 2 years that has us here today in all of the places that we mentioned, but we're still virtually at the Filmmaker Lodge. So tell me how the pandemic has had an impact on what we will see next and how we will move forward. It has affected us in different ways. Some people have become entrepreneurs that we didn't expect to be, and some people haven't been able to figure it out. So just a bit of a round robin. So I'll start with JaSaun. I have you at the top, and then we will go through the list, and then we'll finish with the final question. So Jace.
We've talked about innovation and creativity, and I think that just from like a human perspective, what the pandemic has taught me is that the time is now. Like the things that you want to do, the things that you want to say, things that need to be paid attention to, that's happening right now. And I think that leads into just finding a way and leaning into the technology that we do have, or the technology that's being created. For In Our Mother's Gardens, we shot the interviews, thank goodness, in 2018 and 2019 before the pandemic. So all of our post-production was done remote, and we just like virtually held hands between Philly, New York, Chicago, LA, North Carolina to get things done and figure out, as filmmakers and producers do, just figure out how to make it work, and be open to a process that wasn't traditionally how things are made. And also being able to work with people like across the diaspora in a different country in different ways. Some of our designers lived in Africa and the Netherlands. And I think before we were like boxed into okay, we're all in the same room making this, and we've got to use the post house that's down the street. And so for us, that wasn't the case. And I think that moving forward, people will also just be able to expand what it is that they need and what they're doing, because we have the reach to do it.
Yes, I love bridging the global divide. We have done that without even planning to do so. Kaelo, what are your thoughts around this?
Jenean, for me, I'm seeing the pandemic has forged a particular set of filmmakers who are more desperate than ever to make content, who are more desperate than ever to tell their stories and to create. And there's this incredible thirst to connect and to collaborate with each other. And I'm really excited about it because I see like an explosion of creativity in the very near future.
Exciting. Jen, I have you next on the screen. Thoughts around that?
Absolutely. I think it goes back to something that JaSaun was describing around connecting with people when they're not physically right where you are. This pandemic's really opened up the need for people to feel connected, I think, for me. With the absence of the ways that we typically do that, really the entrepreneurship around how do we make it work now when we physically can't be together. I think it's opened up storytelling in a big way. And I think that we see that in the 2 clips that we saw today, and just across different platforms and across different communities of how people are coming together to support each other and not feel alone. So I think that's the thing that's been most inspiring. And when I think about the work that we're doing, or that we do in my team at Meta, that we're really focused on doing that. How can stories bring people back together, and how can our platforms connect people back together around those stories so that they don't feel alone?
Wonderful. Thank you. And Brickson, last but not least for this question.
I may take a different approach to the question and to this answer. I think that this period has created such an opening for new vulnerabilities and new vulnerability in storytelling. So there are things that we discuss as a matter of course as a society and a global society today that were off limits before. Right. And so I think that the courage to tell those stories, the courage to raise one's hand when they have those stories to tell has never been more welcomed. Right. There've never been more sort of pensive spaces that we've all been in to really consider each other and to consider each other's narratives in meaningful ways. And so I think that I hope won't change with whatever is next. Yeah. And so I hope that means that we'll continue to see new voices. I mean, the subject matters that are being discussed at Sundance this year, which range from racial justice to reproductive rights to criminal justice, are all things that are critically important. And I think that our new awareness and consciousness about ourselves and the world that has always been dangerous, but felt even more dangerous. Create space for those who have not necessarily been in the mainstream or who've been checked for to have a moment and an opportunity. Now, resources, even though you think about the democratization of filmmaking and content creation, resources are still scarce. But I think if you think about things like Scene, it allows you to understand, how do you scale? How do you build audience? How do you figure out people want to be touched with more vulnerable stories, but how do you reach them? And so I think I'm excited about this vulnerability that we're all coming out of or settling into, if not coming out of it, and the ability for storytellers who before haven't had the platforms to not just have those platforms, but to have the receptivity to those more vulnerable and more raw stories.
Well said. Yeah, those genres definitely are, prevalent for this group of films in the festival, and equity. Just the equity on all levels, I think, becomes the bigger conversation. And we only have 5 minutes left, and actually maybe 4. So I'll do a quick 1-minute round robin again. You brought up the films at Sundance. A lot are being buzzed about. I'll go first and say, as a Chicago native, I am looking forward to seeing the filmmaking duo Kuti and Chike and their genius film. I am sure it will be full of surprises. So I'm looking forward to that based on who it's all about. So that's the one I'm looking forward to see. What about you, Brickson? We'll go backwards. Brickson, what do you think?
Descendant, and we have a panel tomorrow on Descendant with the filmmakers and some of the subjects of the film, which tells the story of the last slave ship. Slave folks were stolen from Africa and brought to the U.S. after slavery was prohibited, and so they're trying to squeeze this in. And the story talks about the descendants of that ship and their lives in the town that the ship landed in. And so it's a fascinating documentary that couldn't be more timely or more interesting, given what we're thinking about in terms of environmental justice and racial justice, but also economic justice. So I think it's a must-see.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm actually going to go to Kaelo, then JaSaun, and then finish with you, Jen. So Kaelo, what are your thoughts?
I'm probably a little biased, but I'm really excited for Olive Wosu's at Gungun. She's my fellow Nigerian sister, and she is also a Columbia alumni. I'm really excited that she is sharing this story here at Sundance, and I can't wait to see how it's received.
See, that's mentorship at its finest. We've got to connect you. See, that's what we now have to do. We have to connect you guys because you have all of that in common. So I think that's fantastic. Love it. JaSaun.
Okay, I got a short list, but I'm going to make it fast. I'm excited about Genius. Kuti and Chike are friends. It's always great when your friends have a film in the festival. They're friends and colleagues, as well as Descendant, because Essie is a friend, and I'm happy and proud of her. I'm excited about Summer Ring and Honk for Jesus, because these two Black women who are twins, bringing that story out with that talent, I'm super excited about. So I'm ready to watch some films.
Definitely. Yes, for Essie and the Igbo twins, because they are another directing duo, which is fantastic, coming out of Sundance. Wonderful. Jen.
Yes, I've got to plus up Honk for Jesus, Save Your Soul as well with the Igbo sisters, coming from right here in Atlanta, where I am now as well. And there's just the story that they're telling around their connection to the mega church community and how that connection feels both strong and welcoming, but also raises a lot of questions. I just think it's going to be a phenomenal story, and I'm really excited to see that film.
Well, I just want to thank everyone here on the panel and the audience watching us. We've spent an hour just sharing what it means to be seen today, because things have evolved. And as we look forward to amazing filmmakers and films that we'll see in this festival, let's just keep in mind how we move forward with that, how we support each other, programs that we can support, like the Blackhouse Foundation. We wouldn't do what we do if we didn't have amazing strategic partnerships, and Meta has been fantastic with helping us really scale our impact and really show what we can do, and we keep evolving. So appreciate that, Jen. Brickson, thank you for sharing all that you have, and we are so delighted that Kaelo and JaSaun could join us today. We are coming again from the Filmmaker Lodge virtually, but thank you so much, Sundance, for this platform. And I think you have some Q&A maybe that we will answer later on, but thank you guys so much and have a wonderful, wonderful festival. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Everybody keep asking for what you want.
Yes.
Yes. It's still 20 seconds. You can tell them something else. If anybody has anything, shout it out. And we can see some of your messages. Thank you, Levon. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Back. We have another meta panel coming up with Miss Tina Lawson-Knowles next. So it's going to be exciting. But just
in the Meta family.
In the Meta family.
Please stay tuned for that. Absolutely.
Saturday as well. Doing plugs. So yes.
Plug them in. I think we might be at time. Thank you so much. We appreciate you guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.